My father caught the back of my wool tunic just as the wind rushed through the open door. I had been watching the snow cover the yard and did not notice how quickly the cold had reached me. He pulled me inside, shut the door, and placed me near the hearth without saying a word. Before we continue, make yourself comfortable. If you enjoy these quiet stories from the past, you can support the channel by liking the video and subscribing, but only if you truly enjoy what I create here. And if you are listening right now, tell me where you are and what time it is there in the comments. I always enjoy seeing where in the world these stories are being heard. Now, let me take you back to that winter. My name was Einar. I lived with my family on a small farm in Hålogaland in the north of Norway. My younger sister was called Runa, and my father's name was Torstein. In summer, our farm felt open and wide. Runa and I ran between the buildings, followed the sheep, and searched the shore for shells and driftwood. Men worked around the boats. Fish are dried in the air. Gulls cried above the roofs. The days were long, and it seemed that there was always somewhere else to go. That changed when autumn ended. The light faded earlier each day, frost hardened the ground, and the adults began preparing for snow. Fish were dried, grain was stored, hay was moved under cover, wood was stacked close to the house. My father checked the roof, repaired the door frame, and searched the walls for places where cold air entered. He became quieter during those weeks because every mistake made before winter could become dangerous later. Before the first great storm, he tied a rope from our door to the animal shelter. I laughed because the distance was short, and I knew the yard well. A few days later, snow covered everything. The fence disappeared. The path vanished. Even the shelter became difficult to see. Father wrapped the rope around his wrist before going outside to check the animals. I stood beside my mother and watched him disappear into the storm. Only the rope remained visible, stretched between his hand and our door. That was when I first understood what winter meant. It was not only cold weather. It was the season when our world became smaller, and every safe step depended on something my father had prepared before the snow arrived. Our house was long, dark, crowded, and warmer than the world outside, though not always warm enough to be comfortable. Thick walls and a roof covered with turf protected us from the worst weather. A long hearth burned through the center of the main living space, and raised benches lined the walls. We worked on those benches during the day, and slept on them at night beneath wool blankets and whatever skins the household could spare. There were no separate rooms waiting behind bright doors. Most of our lives happened in the same dim space. My parents slept near the household chest and the tools. My grandmother Irsa slept closer to the hearth because cold settled into her joints. Runa and I shared one sleeping place and often fought over the same blanket until the night became too cold for either of us to pull it away. The house smelled of damp wool, dried fish, smoke, sweat, sour milk, old wood, and the animals sheltered at the lower end. When the cold became severe, some of the livestock were brought beneath the same roof behind a rough partition. They did not sleep among us, but they were close enough for us to hear their hooves, their breathing, and the wet sound of chewing in the darkness. One evening, Father brought in a weak ewe whose legs were wet and dirty. I covered my nose while he guided her toward the sheltered end of the building. He told me I could complain about the smell after I had become warm enough to notice it. At the time, I thought this was unfair. The U smelled terrible whether I was warm or cold. But that night, the wind pressed against the walls, and cold air moved close to the floor. Behind the partition, the animals gave off a thick, living warmth. The U survived, and the heat from their bodies helped our house hold what little warmth it had. The fire was our greatest protection, but it was also our greatest discomfort. It gave us heat, light, hot food, and embers that could be carried from one day into the next. Yet much of the smoke remained inside. Some escaped through the opening above the hearth or through the doorway. But on still nights or during bad weather, smoke gathered beneath the roof and lowered into the room. It stung our eyes, darkened the beams, settled into our clothing, and made every breath taste of ash. Everything we owned smelled of it. Our hair, blankets, wool tunics, food, and even the wooden cups carried the same heavy scent. In winter, smoke became part of our bodies. We coughed it out in the morning and breathed it in again at night. Runa coughed more than the rest of us. She was small for her age and tired easily. On bad nights, Mother raised her head with folded cloth so that she did not lie flat. I often woke with my own throat burning and my eyes wet. One night, I found Father crouched beside the hearth, pushing the coals together. The flames had nearly died, but smoke still hung in the house. I coughed until my chest hurt and asked him why we could not let the fire go out. Smoke is better than frost. He did not speak harshly. He said it as though he were telling me the tide had risen, or that the ice was thin. The truth did not change, because a child disliked it. He added wood to the coals. The fire returned, and so did the smoke. I lay down with the blanket partly over my mouth. That winter taught me that survival did not mean finding comfort. It meant choosing the danger most likely to leave you alive. Fire warmed us and hurt our lungs. Animals heated the house and fouled the air. Thick walls protected us and trapped smoke, sickness, smell, and noise inside. There was no clean and easy answer. There was only the cold outside and the difficult shelter within. As the winter deepened, the outside world became less real to me. I knew the shore was still below the farm, and the forest still stood above it, but I saw them only in brief moments when the weather cleared. Most days, my world was the fire, the benches, the hanging tools, the food chest, the animal partition, and the wooden door that Father opened as little as possible. The house protected us, but it also tested us. We slept close enough to hear one another breathe. There was little privacy, and every illness, argument, hunger, and fear belonged to everyone. When one child cried, the whole household heard it. When one animal became restless, no one slept well. When food was cooked, every hungry person smelled it long before the bowl arrived. Winter reduced our lives to a few important things. Heat had to be protected. Food had to be divided. Clothing had to remain dry. Animals had to survive. No one could waste strength merely because they were tired of being inside. For many years, I believed my father was the one who kept us alive because his work was easiest for a child to see. He went outside while storms moved across the farm. He chopped wood, repaired the roof, checked traps, carried hay, broke ice, and dug snow away from the door. He returned with frozen hair, split fingers, and clothing stiff from dampness. My mother, Astrid, remained inside for much of the winter, and as a child, I mistook remaining inside for safety. I did not understand that she was fighting another part of the same battle. Mother wore keys at her belt. One opened the household chest where food, cloth, needles, and small valuable things were kept. She knew how much barley remained, how many dried fish could be used each week, which cheese would spoil first, how much fat could be spared, and how long our stores might last if no one became careless. She measured winter in handfuls. Each morning, she opened the chest and decided what could leave it. She made porridge from barley when grain was available. She softened dried fish in water. She saved cooking fat, scraped pots, boiled bones, and used sour milk rather than waste it. Tough meat was cooked until it could be chewed. The water in which food had been boiled was often used again. Nothing was discarded because it looked unpleasant. A bone could still hold flavor. A skin could be scraped. Old bread could be softened. A thin layer of fat could make a weak meal more useful. Mother understood that waste was not simply careless during winter. It was dangerous. One evening, I reached for another piece of fish before she had divided the meal. Mother caught my wrist and told me to wait. I complained that I was hungry. She reminded me that Runa was hungry too. I looked toward Father, expecting him to speak for me, but he remained silent. Mother divided the fish. Father received the largest piece because he would go outside before dawn. Grandmother received a smaller one. Runa and I were given equal portions. Mother kept the thinnest piece for herself. Later that night, I woke and saw her beside the hearth, scraping the bottom of the cooking pot with a wooden spoon. She ate what she found while standing alone in the smoky light. Until then, I had imagined she gave herself less because she needed less. That was the first time I understood that adults could be as hungry as children and still choose to wait. Father had his own rules. All of them meant to preserve warmth. We were never to stand in the open doorway, go outside with damp hair, leave wet shoes unattended, carry wood against bare skin, or sleep beside the coldest wall during the deepest part of winter. Snow had to be brushed from clothing before we came inside so that it did not melt into the wool. Shoes had to dry slowly, not close enough to the fire to harden or crack. I learned the reason for those rules after wearing damp shoes into the woods. At first, my feet merely felt cold. Then my toes began to ache. After a while, the pain faded, and I believed that meant they were becoming warmer. Father noticed something was wrong before I admitted it. He pressed his hand against the leather, removed his outer cloak, wrapped it around me, and ordered me to keep walking. He told me the pain was useful because it meant my feet could still feel. Back at the house, Mother removed my shoes and warmed my feet slowly beneath dry wool. When feeling returned, the pain made me cry harder than I had when they were numb. Father sat nearby repairing a knife handle. Later, he filled my shoes with dry grass and placed them where warm air could reach them without damaging the leather. He told me that next time I must speak, before my feet became quiet. He rarely asked how I felt. He watched closely enough to notice when something changed. That was the difference between my parents. Father looked for danger coming through the door. Mother looked for danger growing inside the house. He studied the wind, the snow, the roof, and the ice. She studied our stores, our faces, our coughs, and the way we looked at the food bowl. When Runa became ill, that difference became clearer. Her usual cough deepened, and fever made her skin hot while the room remained cold. Mother moved her closer to the fire, but kept her away from the thickest smoke. Grandmother prepared warm liquid from dried plants. Mother fed her slowly and gave her part of her own portion. Father adjusted the roof opening when the weather allowed, trying to draw more smoke upward without losing too much heat. When the indoor woodpile became low, he went outside and returned carrying snow-covered pieces beneath one arm. That night, Runa's breathing became fast and shallow. Father removed his heavy wool outer garment and placed it over her blanket. I asked what he would wear. He said he still had his inner tunic. He sat against the wall in thinner clothing, while his shoulders shook from cold. Runa slept beneath his wool. Her fever broke the following day. She remained weak for a long time, but she lived. When I remember that night, I do not remember my father giving a speech about love. I remember him shivering in the darkness because my sister needed the warmth more than he did. My father fought the cold outside the door. My mother fought hunger and sickness inside it. Neither could have saved us alone. My father did not keep me alive by protecting me from every hardship. He kept me alive by making me part of the household before I thought I was old enough. At first, my tasks were small. I gathered chips of wood from beneath the chopping block, carried kindling to the hearth, turned drying shoes, brought water, fed animals, and helped grandmother handle wool. Then father began teaching me things that seemed meant for grown people. He placed a small working knife in my hand and showed me how to cut away from my body. He made me sit while using it and warned me never to leave the blade hidden beneath straw or cloth. A knife could not see what it cut, so the person holding it had to see for both of them. Near the shore, he taught me to listen to ice. The edge of the fjord sometimes froze while water continued moving beneath it. Snow could hide weak places, and ice that looked strong might fail beneath a person's weight. Father struck it with a pole before stepping forward. The sound that moved beneath us was deep and uneasy. Father listened for a moment, then turned back. He did not need to explain much. His face told me the ice was not a road that day. He showed me how hard snow could support a person in the cold morning, and then soften later, when the weak sun had touched it. He taught me to notice changes in color, the shape of drifts, exposed branches, and places where the wind had stripped snow away. He taught me to keep my hands dry, to carry smaller loads safely, and never to assume we had enough of anything to waste it. Once, I dropped an armful of small wood into deep snow and wanted to leave part of it behind. Father made me gather every piece. I complained that it was only kindling and that more waited at home. He reminded me that what seemed plentiful in one week could become precious in the next. At times, I hated his rules. I wanted to remain beside Mother and Runa near the hearth instead of following him into the yard. My arms ached. My fingers burned with cold. I wanted someone to tell me that I had done enough because I was still a child. Father rarely did. One afternoon, I asked grandmother why he was harder on me than on Runa. She told me it was because I followed him. I argued that I followed only because he ordered me to, but she knew better. I wanted to understand where he went and what he knew. I feared the winter world outside, yet I wanted to read it as he did. Father's knowledge seemed like a shelter that could be carried inside the body. If he knew the ice was unsafe, we turned back. If he knew the roof was weak, he repaired it. If he saw that my shoes were too wet, he stopped me before the cold did greater harm. I wanted that knowledge inside me. The animals also became part of my work. During the deepest cold, Father brought one of our cows into the sheltered lower end of the house. She was not a fine animal, but she gave milk when she could, dung for the fields and fuel, and the promise of meat if our household became desperate. Her presence made the smell worse. Her hooves struck the floor at night, and her breath mixed with the smoke and animal stink. I complained about sleeping so close to her. Father told me that a living animal was warmer than an empty, clean corner. He made me responsible for carrying hay, checking her water, and helping clear dirty bedding. He showed me how to approach from where she could see me, and warned me never to stand between her body and the wall. I told him she was gentle. He reminded me that she was also heavy. That was the kind of lesson he gave. Something did not have to be cruel to be dangerous. The cow survived. So did the weak ewe we had brought inside. When warmer days came and we led them back into the yard, Father placed one hand on my shoulder and told me that I had helped keep them alive. No praise from him had ever felt larger. That was when I began to understand why he had given me work. He had not forgotten that I was a child. He knew childhood could not excuse me from winter. Every person who could carry something, watch something, feed something, or notice danger had a place in the household. My father kept me alive by making me useful before I felt ready. At 7 winters old, I sometimes believed this was cruelty. Later, I understood that he was giving me more than work. He was giving me knowledge, responsibility, and a reason not to become helpless. Hardest part of winter came when our food stores began to shrink faster than the cold. The days were lengthening, but nothing had begun to grow. Light returned before food did. Mother reduced the portions again. The dried fish were nearly gone. Grain remained but could not be used freely. One animal had stopped giving milk. The hens produced almost nothing. Father checked snares above the farm, searched for birds, cut holes near the edge of the fjord when the ice was safe, and gathered any wood that could still be reached. Some days he returned with food. Other days he returned carrying only cold. Until then, I had believed that effort always produced something. In stories told near the fire, a clever hunter found an animal, a strong fisherman pulled food from the sea, and a wise household prepared enough before winter. Real life did not obey stories. Animals avoided traps. Weather changed. Ice became dangerous. Tools broke. Bodies weakened. A man could work from darkness to darkness and return with nothing. One morning, Father left before full light. Snow had fallen during the night, and Mother warned him not to go beyond the upper ridge. He told her that he knew the ridge, but she answered that the snow had changed. They looked at each other for a moment, neither willing to say more. Then Father left. By midday, the wind returned. It did not become a great storm, but snow moved across the slope and covered old tracks. Mother opened the door twice to look outside, though there was nothing to see. Darkness came, and Father had not returned. I sat near the door listening. The walls creaked. Snow brushed the roof. The animals shifted behind the partition. Every small sound seemed like a hand touching the door bar. Mother continued working, but she moved more quickly and made small mistakes. She dropped a wooden spoon. then stood still for a moment before picking it up. Grandmother kept Runa occupied near the hearth. No one spoke about father. The evening meal was small. His portion remained in the pot. At last, the dog raised its head. We heard something strike the outer wall, followed by the scrape of wood. Father entered bent beneath the wind. Snow covered his shoulders, and ice clung to his beard. The skin around his eyes was dark with exhaustion. He carried no hair, no bird, and no fish. Mother helped him remove his outer clothing. I looked behind him as though food might still appear from the storm. He told us the traps had been empty. He had seen only tracks. When I asked why he had not caught the animals that made them, he answered that they wished to live too. That silenced me. Mother gave him the portion she had kept warm. He ate slowly. His hands shook around the bowl. Until that night, I had believed my father was stronger than winter, because he always entered it and returned. I thought his axe, knife, rope, and knowledge gave him control over the cold, but he had come home empty-handed. Snow could exhaust him. Cold could split his skin. Hunger could defeat his traps. His strength could not force animals to appear or make the sea safe beneath the ice. That was the first night I understood my father was not stronger than winter. He was only willing to face it again. Before dawn, I woke to the sound of him preparing to leave. Mother told him he should rest, but he reminded her that the traps would not come to the house by themselves. She warned that there might be nothing in them. He said there might be. I asked to go with him, but he refused. He needed to move quickly that day. Before leaving, he placed one hand on my head. It remained there only a moment. Then he opened the door and stepped into the cold. He returned later with one small bird and a bundle of wood. The bird was not enough to satisfy anyone. Mother added it to a pot with water, grain, and what little fat she could spare. Every person received some of the broth. That meal did not feel like victory. It felt like another day survived. The winter continued. Father still returned empty-handed at times. Mother still made the food stretch. Runa still coughed. Grandmother still woke with pain in her joints. I still complained when work felt too difficult. Nothing changed in one great moment. We survived because the work continued, even when it brought little reward. Spring did not arrive suddenly. It came in drops from the roof, in dark patches of snow beside the walls, and in a door that opened more easily each morning. A little grass appeared near the path, disappeared beneath fresh snow, then returned again. The cold did not leave us at once, and the food chest did not refill, because sunlight had come back. There were still difficult weeks ahead, yet the world slowly grew larger. One morning, Father and I cleared a heavy drift from the sheltered side of the house. The snow was wet and difficult to lift. My arms tired quickly, but he did not tell me to stop. He simply took larger loads onto his own shovel. Runa stood in the doorway, wrapped in wool. She was thin after her illness, but she was smiling. Behind her, Mother had opened the door wider than usual. Sunlight entered our house and reached the floor. For months, our world had been firelight, smoke, dark beams, and the pale shape of the doorway. Now I could see every rough surface, every stain, and every thread of smoke moving through the air. The house looked smaller than I remembered. We led the animals outside. The cow stepped slowly into the yard, uncertain on her legs. The ewe followed. Steam rose from their bodies as they stood beneath the pale sky, breathing air that did not taste of smoke. The yard smelled of wet earth, salt, dung, melting snow, and old grass. To me, it smelled clean. Father walked to the edge of the field. The ground was still frozen beneath the surface, and nothing could yet be planted. He had grown thin during the winter. His belt closed at a different hole, and new lines had appeared around his eyes. For the first time, I saw him not as a man who belonged to winter, but as a tired man who had passed through it. I asked whether winter was finished. He looked toward the northern slope, where snow still lay deep between the trees. It was not finished, but the water dripping from our roof showed that it was beginning to lose its hold. That was the closest my father came to claiming victory. He did not defeat winter. None of us did. We endured until it began to change. In the days that followed, the animals spent longer outside. The path toward the shore appeared again. Water ran beneath the snow. Men began checking boats and tools that had waded through the cold months. Mother opened the food chest without having to count every mouthful in the same way. There was still hunger, but it no longer felt endless. I had survived another winter, though at the time I did not understand how close survival sometimes stood to failure. I saw only that the door could remain open longer, the animals could leave the house, and Father no longer disappeared into complete darkness when he went outside in the morning. Many years later, I came to understand how easily childhood turned survival into a story about one strong person. I once believed we lived because my father was tougher than other men. In truth, he was not always strong. He returned empty-handed. He became tired. His hands shook. He could not command the weather, the animals, or the sea. He could not stop my sister from becoming ill. He could not make our food chest remain full. We survived because many small things were done before they became great dangers. My father closed the door. He repaired the roof. He kept the embers alive. He dried my shoes. He watched my face when I returned from the cold. He brought animals under shelter, carried wood through storms, and taught me to listen when ice could not be trusted. My mother counted grain, divided fish, guarded the food chest, fed my sister, and ate after the rest of us. My grandmother kept old household knowledge alive. Even the animals helped warm the roof that sheltered them. No single person saved our family. Winter was fought by everyone who remained awake, carried something, shared something, or went without. Still, when I think of my father, I return to the first memory I ever kept. The door is open. Snow moves across the yard. I am too close to the wind because I do not yet understand what cold can take from a body. Then my father's hand closes around my tunic. He pulls me back into the house, shuts the door, and places me beside the fire, not close enough to burn and not far enough to freeze. He did not save me in one heroic moment. He saved me through 100 small acts I barely noticed at the time. A closed door, a living ember, a dry shoe, a shared blanket, an armful of wood, a hand upon my shoulder, and one more step into the snow when morning came.